Started to be a form you need today. Call me the order 6 p.m. Until the 26th. Well, I like that. Well, okay, all of you received the copy of the prior review minutes. Take a second to take one final look at that.
You know, I think that we second it.
Okay, motion second is by you. All in favor? Aye. It was unanimous. Great, thank you. So, I'm going to hold a copy of the meeting agenda. There are copies on the floor of the table if you know. So let's start my chair report. So maybe a couple of just general comments. So I'd like to run this meeting like the board runs their meeting. So the agenda kind of follows that format: minutes, reports, financial review, old new business, and then resident open forum. So in the interest of time, you're your hand is when you do. If you could take notes during the discussions, and then any of you residents who are in attendance, if you have any questions or any comments, you can do that during the resident open forum and give everybody, at least 5 minutes to talk about any item that they able to need. So, and again, as a standing committee of the board, our job is to, if we have any changes or anything, if some of the topics they would require that, this committee can make a recommendation to the board, and the board gets to approve it. So, the board meeting is 2 weeks from tonight, November 9th. So,
Could I make
sure.
a question?
Sure.
I know the last meeting, Kathy Clamp had asked a question of Marcia, and I just wanted to see if she had found anything to correct or have a link to show the matrix of that.
That's part of my report.
Okay.
Okay,
Thank you.
yeah, no problem. Thanks for bringing that up. So with that, let me go ahead and give my report. So, and as we've done before, I'll prepare a draft report for the board, and I'll send that to the committee for review and approval. And usually Marcia would like to see that by Friday before. So whatever that, November 3rd. So I'll get that report to all before then, and then by noon Friday, Marcia needs it. It goes to a packet for the board, so they see that stuff ahead of time. So they get about a week to read through and see everything. And then if they have any questions, they can contact the appropriate person or discuss items with other board members. So, okay. So basically my report is kind of the issue status. So kind of in general, good news, I think a lot of issues are being resolved. So let me start with our most important issue that, and as Karen summarize that, I know we said anything about the data, maybe you can just sort of work with something very about that.
Quickly, using the gate numbers out the past few days, they replaced the 2 operators at the lower end, and they are replacing the 2 at the upper end. Rain kind of balled things up. I talked to Ethan today. He said barring no rain tomorrow, which we're going to get rain. They hope to finish tomorrow. And after that, they've got to calibrate everything, the punches that we use to get in. They've got to do something, old wiring, new wiring, whatever. They got their electrical stuff. And basically in a few days, we should have operating gates. And that's what we've wanted for a long time. So
we won't have to replace.
nope, well, they're gonna re-control it and do their computer stuff. And I am not computer literate, I admit it. So when I say computer stuff, you know what I'm talking about. They're doing it, and it assures me that these are lift master operators, and they are the best in the business. Okay, I've been around long enough to know that anything you sell is the best in the business, okay? But it is a significant upgrade from what we have now. That's all I'll say. So I don't anticipate any problems once they're done. Another thing I want to talk to Marcia about, I should have gotten here earlier, but Deacon and I talked about putting in cameras. And I told him once that, and I'm sure it's happened more than once, a garbage truck or a bus or an Amazon truck or something hit one of the gates. Well, okay, it's fine. A couple of us saw it and witnesses, okay, fine. You got it on tape. Tends to have more creeps, okay? Evidence, yeah. So that might be another discussion for another day, I should say. And he suggested, and they install the cameras, but he suggested one on the outside, one on the inside, one on the inside, on the outside. So you see everybody kind of going and you see license plates. That's the big one right there. So they don't, they work with a guy that has a license. They do the installation, this other guy does the licensing. And they work that out. So if we want to go in grade, we don't want to do anything, that's fine, but we can discuss that at some point. But I thought it makes sense just because we've got, you know, going very well, you give your gate code out to Amazon or the pizza guy or whoever, you know, and accidents happen, you know, sometimes people get pissed off when the gates don't open quickly enough. They haven't done it, and then they try to run through because they got to deliver a pizza down there. So it's good for them.
I think a lot of them too is people are going in the app. And I don't know what the solution to that is, but I think that if that's whatever underground is.
I never asked, I'm going to ask them, but I agree with you. And
it's very common anytime, anytime you get a community, people are trying to, you know, everybody's time is the most important, and you know, you're going to always have knuckleheads that are going to be doing things they shouldn't be doing.
it's called me.
Yes, but I don't like violence. Yeah, you know, it definitely happens. I love the camera thing. I mean, we've talked about cameras before. The issue being that it's the infrastructure, it's not there. There are newer you know, items on the market that are wireless. I'm not sure if it would be a good fit for you guys, but I definitely would contact over. There's a company called Flock Safety. They've been in the news a little bit if you Google it. Because their big MO is they partner with the police department and report to the police department and license plates for robberies and things like that. But they've been very controversial in the news lately. So I can definitely, if it's the committee's wish to look into that, I can ask for them to report.
We're not there. Yes, absolutely. I'm recommending cover into. I don't know that. I have no idea.
It's cameras they're less of a curse because I have had it where, you know, the cameras like we've had just in the year I've been here, functions in where I would pull the camera footage and it's like, oh, geez, it's just outside the frame, or it's just, we can't quite tell so, best laid plan, so it's not a perfect solution, but it definitely helps. I have had a handful of experiences in my career where people with camera footage go, what the hell, there we go. There was a vandalism here in this building a few months ago, and they were able to identify the culprits and hold them legally responsible because of camera footage. So I'm all for it, we can afford it.
But it's also expensive to keep repairing the gates. Because I think the majority of the problems with the gates are people hitting them. They are either too much in a hurry, or they get distracted and the gate opens and they sit there and, oh, I gotta go. Well, then they go and then the gate hits their car, or they hit the gate or something. And then that's what
I'm not doing this is last time failures. Prior to them, starting the installation of the operators, gate operators indicated to me that there's physical evidence on the gate to indicate that someone had hit it. And for the upper gate to have the arm be broken in the manner it's broken, you have to hit that gate for the arm. So it happens, and we don't know if it's UPS, the trash truck, or.
Well, I watched the treasure truck,
I'm sure you have,
Yeah.
So we have video evidence then,
Yeah.
about and where you should.
It's proof, otherwise it's an allegation.
I will have to say something about the people that had working on her yard. They hit our gate, and they immediately called their supervisors and told them, and they're right here. Yes, everything else that's.
Unfortunately, not everyone has.
We're gonna talk about the signs in a bit. After all of you saw the quote that we had got to replace laser cut existing signs by the big wires. We had a new quote, and we'll talk about that as part of the new business strategy. I did ask Kevin, because I read it, when the gate doctors did some initial fixing, they also did some reloading. And they've been doing Feinberg or anything. So I asked them if they could at least Feinberg the areas that welded. And I said, can you guys pay that too? And they said that for both. So I guess if we're talking, to gate factors again, and I'm going to ask what we can charge for. You think what was a good block and stuff,
Yeah.
because they're well ourselves with them.
Well, and I would recommend waiting until you guys decide what you're gonna do with the direct elements first.
Yeah, okay. Our next item is cutting of high grass in the tree area, and several of you contacted myself and Marcia on that, and so why don't I let Marcia give everybody an update on that?
So, yeah, they came through and they mowed, and, I use the term loosely. There's definitely some areas that were not mowed, and of course, when I approached them and said, well, what gives? It was, well, there's rocks, and there's lots of rocks in that particular area. And I guess whenever they went to mow, their equipment started hitting the rocks and causing sparks, so they stopped immediately. Obviously, thank you, don't burn our community down. But my response to her, and I haven't received a response back to that response, was, that's all well and good, I appreciate you for not burning the place down, however, first is something I see here, that, the intent was for the scope of work, was for you to mow this area, I don't care what equipment you need, basically, you're supposed to mow that, so, I don't have a response yet, so I'm still fighting the good fight on that, as they say. Fortunately, we've gotten quite a bit of rain, but it's not going to last forever.
Well, they could weed whack.
Later, we
Yeah, weed eat around there.
there's a big things there, but there are tools to cut that.
I have a feeling another response is going to be that we quoted it with a shredder, not with that level of work. So there may be an additional charge to go in and do a more detailed approach to it. I don't know. And whoever was mowing it before, Sunscape said they weren't mowing it, Napier says they weren't mowing it, I don't know why y'all went out there with snow, no, somebody.
Sunscape was moving.
The open space behind the retreat, there's.
Water district contractor.
Yeah.
That would have been Sunscape, because I saw them out for shred mowing, because we.
That was one Sunscape, the new water district contractor, that was one before Sunscape. They changed their contractor too.
Okay,
These people that mowed that lawn up there lately didn't have the proper equipment
No.
to even get started. They looked like they put a monkey on a small lawnmower.
Yeah, it didn't even have the equipment that like you, yeah, they were small.
Okay, so Marcia's going to pursue getting them to come back out. And if there's additional funds to do that, I mentioned that there's huge lots, I mean, that, those who walk the area, you know, that's quite scary.
Those funds don't come out of us anyway, that's HOA's part responsibility.
concerned with some of the homes back, the
The reason we're involved is because there's 4 or 5 homes behind that who are being cut either, so that's why we got involved. Jane, I'm sorry, Steve?
Yeah, just a comment on the mowing of green belts. I live on the side that backs up to the green belt area. And behind our house, they come along on a riding board and go along the fence line. And then somebody will come along with the weed. Then the big tractor mower comes along and does the remainder.
open space, yeah.
Right, but then when you get close to the tree line, that tractor can't get over there. Where that riding mower could get over there, because I had to borrow Mr. Cronin's lawnmower. Because I got so tired of looking at that tall grass that was a fire hazard in addition to being unsightly, and go mow it. And there's no rocks there, it's just the same ground as the other is. You know, it dips, and I'm sure that's why they don't do that big tractor, but that riding board could pretty easily. So that if they go along the tree line as well as along the fence line with that.
That's what I say, it's the amount of equipment, like what you're saying, that they brought out to accomplish.
I don't think that is we do. When we were first in our house, we would go around the tree line.
No, I'm talking about the whole tree line that runs back behind the green belt. I mean, there's an area that is almost as wide as from where I'm sitting to the wall of it. That wasn't built.
Yeah, we can contact Sunscape if that's what we see it being responsible. We can certainly ask, and send that, it's natural. Because you're right, it's like they cut the corners, they don't go. Yeah, but they're trying to.
Right, some of the areas, it's not good. It's like tractors, but that riding board would easily.
Well, behind our house, up next to the tree line, they, all they need to do is follow up with weed. And weed around that, it's just a little strip around that, but it's unsightly.
Yeah.
There's that grass and weed.
Yeah, sort of what they do, I think they do it. Or do something, but let me ask them. Okay. On the organization responsibility matrix, I think the elements was your points that came up. So I guess I asked Marty to try and search out some of this stuff again. And so it's kind of our thoughts right now.
Yeah, I spent probably solid 4 hours just searching, recorded documents and, trying to figure out like where, zooming in on plat maps, trying to figure out, can I answer the question, who legally owns the gates in the code? And I kind of came up dry. I emailed legal then and said, listen, what am I missing here? How can I figure this out? And I explained a little more, saying this, the question is not who's the responsibility to maintain. That is easy, we've got that, that's clearly defined, but who owns? And the long and short of it is he came back and said, without doing a lot of extensive, looking into surveys and figuring out that we can't definitively say, this is his opinion, we can't definitively say who owns that, because they're on the property lines between either private home and WCI, two lands, or on private home and And the HOA land, and Helen looks like you have something you'd like to say in response to that. Because you should.
But I'm surprised you didn't call Mason County, because Mason County can tell you exactly who's it. And, it is WCID that owns that land. They're the principal owner of the gates, the road, and, all the easements. So it's,
So it's county goes to that?
yeah, in Mason County. The BCA is the responsible party, but they are not the owner. So that,
So I have a question, if you guys knew that before, or you just didn't tell me that you already looked into that? Because, I mean, that would have been good information for me.
we presented it last time, and then I, to make sure that what I needed was correct. So, people at Mason County are just really nice. They'll answer any question.
Who did you speak to? So, what's the
My concern is now that the code has incurred legal fees because of this, and then I would maybe could have avoided that for you guys if that information had been shared with me. So, you know, it's just working together in a partnership, and what's good, what's best for the.
I understand that, but I'm just saying that it's a clear phone call for me, so I don't know why, you know, it's straight out.
So they got their spotlight. Spotlight is in the middle of the wall, down the fence.
They want the wall.
It's over.
Did they point to some sort of, oh, that's a show, I need something that I. Oh,
Yeah. I'm just saying that, it isn't something in a section that shows that, it is the wall, I gave the road, are all on my CID. The HOA, was asked to take responsibility for collecting the fees. To maintain and maintain.
Well, that's declarations.
Right.
State.
Correct.
I read that's what we should be talking about.
And why is it important that we know something like this,
Exactly.
what is that?
We know who are, what.
Really, the selection of what, why,
Because it's.
So you get that.
Because it's liability.
It's all.
Okay.
So the gate,
But the
the
liability,
image is
yeah,
someone's car. They call that CID.
No,
No,
we are responsible. The HOA is responsible for collecting fees. We are participating in that responsibility.
we said section 15, there's no section 15, it's not on declaration section.
What would be the liability they would follow?
Right?
What would be the liability then?
Because the WCID asked the HOA and the board members to that time took responsibility to maintain and, for informing code to, maintain the gates, the wall, and the road, the easements. By collecting fees to maintain.
Right, yeah, we clearly have.
Did we also set liability then too?
Yes.
Reliable.
Or a kid. They're a
Yeah.
kid.
That's part of
And
it.
you take,
Okay.
who's mine? Who's mine?
For that,
Well,
Yeah, HOA, sorry, so.
But the
There
supplemental,
is no supplement 50.
well,
There's no section 50.
I encourage, it's not difficult to read, I've read it several times myself. My attorney's read it. It is, okay, to explain, the supplemental originated with Crescent Communities was the declarant at the time. Since then, that was passed on to Belterra Development LLC. There are provisions within the declaration that says as ownership and things change, everything within the declaration follows that. Y'all probably all understand it. So what happened was, we reached a point, if I can finish, please. We reached a point where WCID became the declarant, the owner, through a deed that was processed, not too terribly long ago, actually. So that's what made WCID the owner of everything. They're the owner of all the street facilities. So when you read the supplemental and it refers to declarant and owner, that's now WCID. At the time that that supplemental was originated, it was Crescent, Homes, and Sitterly. Sitterly also had some ownership of some lots and whatnot, but that expired when everything was built out. So the current situation we have is WCID is the declarant. When you read the supplemental declaration and you read declarant, it's now WCID.
Does it say that in the declaration?
No, but there's provisions and there's a deed. So when you go to the county and then you see all these file numbers, what they do is they lay out a timeline and a paper trail for what happened when. So the supplemental stays no matter who takes ownership down the line. But there are legal documents filed with the county that shows that WCID took ownership on a certain day. So Crescent's no longer in the picture. Belterra Development LLC is no longer in the picture. It's now WCID is the declarant and owner of the street and all of the street facilities. And in the supplemental, you'll see those are identified in the supplemental margin.
So could you be talking about the assignment and the assumption of declarant rights?
I'm sorry.
Could you be talking about the assignment and the assumption of declarant rights? Where Crescent turned their declarant rights over to WCID too?
They did it, well, they actually received deed of ownership. You should have a copy of that deed in your records.
Yeah, I do have a copy of deed I have all the property deeds,
Yeah,
but I don't have anything that specifies the street facilities as defined in the supplemental declaration.
Yes, but as I said, if you read the entire document, there's legal language in there that specifically says any future owners, assignees, or whatever. So in other words, everything in that document follows whoever then takes ownership. That document, like I didn't own my house when that document was created, but my lot was part of that. See, so Roland and I purchased a lot. We got a deed of ownership. Okay, so there came a time that Belterra Development LLC transferred the ownership deed, the deed, and all that's in the county records to WCID. They needed everything within section 15, the private street facilities, and that's all laid out in the declaration that specifically said gates, chaos, you know, this is all you see that. So there's no ownership for the BCA. What they did was they accepted the board at the time, accepted the responsibility to do all the maintenance, like the assessment fees and all that. Crescent didn't want that, or for whatever reason, couldn't accept that. Belterra Development then didn't. So it was in the original plan that, you know, the homeowners association, if our community here in the Cove is going to be part of the HOA, then the HOA would assume that responsibility. So that's why there's no ownership of those things. But there is, it's kind of like if you owned a rent house, you own it. And when you get ready to lease it out, you make a decision as to who's going to pay for what. As the owner of the property, you pay for the air conditioning, you'll take care of this, you'll take care of that. Or you may decide, well, I'm going to lease it to you, or it's, and you're going to be responsible for all those things. That's all.
To me, it goes back to the liability all of that HOA.
And in the supplemental
And
declaration, yes, yes, and like,
I'm very MCI.
and if you look at the declaration, Ken, there is a section, Marcia can show it to you, that is specifically dedicated to insurance, liability, responsibility, and all that. So the question that you guys should ask Marcia, and I'm sure Marcia can be happy to give the answer for you, is what kind of insurance is there on the gates? What kind of insurance is there on the streets? On the supporting structures that hold up the gates, so on and so on and so on. She can work with you guys and let you know what's there. The HOA has insurance on a lot of things. We don't know specifically what kind of insurance there is on all the private street facilities. I'm trying to emphasize the language in the supplemental. Yeah, once you understand who the declarant and the owner is, then, you know, that is now WCID. And then the entity that assumed the responsibility for collecting assessment fees, maintaining, improving, blah, 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 was BCA.
So that's pretty good, that's, okay.
So from an insurance standpoint, I can address that, because when we, you know, let's say tomorrow we decided to go to a new insurance broker. Part of the standard procedure is to hand over all of the governing documents, because that tells the broker what level of insurance we need and what is required. And then they make their recommendations for a difference. Every year, when it's time for renewal, which is March the 1st of every year, we go through and reevaluate the statement of values for the entire community. Okay, are there any assets added to the association? Let's say, for instance, let's say you guys had another exit and you added another gate. Well, he's going to need to know that to make sure to pass it on to the carrier. So everything that BCA, by extension the code, is responsible for insuring is insured appropriately for liability and for property damage. You know, hailstorm, then the gate or something like that. Everything is insured. So now Helen, your email to me asking if we were getting the gates for insured makes more sense, but they didn't understand what was driving out there. Sometimes that helps to give me perspective. What are you looking for? Other than just answering and asking generic questions, is to, so I can provide you with a full answer. You know, I'm here to help you guys. I'm not here to, you know, cause you to strike or, you know, be, yes, have an integrity question. This is, I'm here to be a servant to this community, and that's what I'm doing.
And Marcia, to clarify my question to you at the last meeting, I specifically said, is it your personal interpretation? I was wanting to know if you had something that I had not been able to find, because I've done all the searching that you've done, right? And there is nothing that gives BCA ownership of any of the private street facilities items that fall within that. It's all in that declaration. It's really not, it's really kind of interesting reading it. There is nothing there. So in my communications with the county, I said, is there anything? They actually are the ones that said and turned me on to the deed that was transferred to WCID. I think it was in 2020 or something, not too terribly long ago, right? And they also took possession of the propane facility and a number of other things in that deed document. There's more than just the section 15. So what I was asking you at the last meeting was, is it your interpretation? Is there something that you have? Right. And Jim says, well, if you can give us those, you know, well, I didn't have anything to give you that showed. Yeah, but my point was there were no file numbers to support what the matrix was saying. I wasn't being.
And that's, and may have called for me because it was not my personal interpretation, it was my personal assumption.
Absolutely. I wasn't insinuating that there was anything intentional on your part at all. I think you know that.
Okay, so let's
Turn it here.
so I'll get started with further insurance stuff and all that's there and update.
I can't,
Yeah.
it is.
It is, yeah. Yeah, okay.
So good.
So that's.
That's one thing I manage condos in Dallas, in the hail mecca of the United States. And trust me when I say I have been through $14 billion hail claims, and insurance is something I do not play around with, y'all.
All right, the next issue is our Cove reserve fund status. I've gotten a lot of emails from you as I put out some information. emails earlier this week, and you've got that as an agenda item, because whatever we would decide to do, the committee can make a recommendation again to the board for approval. That would affect the 2024 rates, because we wouldn't change anything until January, this coming year. So, I'll hold that discussion for a while. I'm working on some options that we can look at, for that release. I had a couple of questions about, Sarah and Jeff sent me stuff about planting trees, so we pursued, again, with Marcia's support and lawyers, so when Marcia, she's gonna go talk to lawyers, that means we pay for that, and we have the funds to do that, it's part of our expense. But, Sarah said we plant some trees, so the quick answer is no fences on WCA property to close off. Now Leanne just sent me something that said, and I apologize, I don't know who she is, but she was kind of told that the open areas on either side of Mendocino are going to be fenced off. She was kind of told that, so the community would, the street would be, well, gated, enclosed, but it's not, so.
I remember when they first moved in, Leanne and,
Snyder.
yes.
Beach.
Snyder and Beach. When they first moved in, she said that's what they were told. I don't know who told them. I don't know if it was Kelly
Yeah.
or, some realtor. I don't know how they.
Let me answer, I was in, after we had a chance before.
Yes,
But
she,
let me ask you, who told them that, because, you know.
she had mentioned that when they first moved in.
It has to be somebody who told her that who's no longer.
Yeah.
Well, that's quite true, yeah, and there was.
And you didn't have to, I was just thinking, probably, she didn't say we told her, it was probably someone who was making that assumption. They assumed those would be eventually closed off.
Yeah.
And.
Yeah, so we could use the Cove reserves. Our assets, which are limited, you know, I tried to do a lot more comprehensive list of what was included in our assets. But no trees on private property, privacy purposes, no trees in the green spaces on the north side of the side, but.
From us.
Oh, reserve, I mean, at one point, I asked the question, gee, could we just plant a bunch of trees along the south side? Close to your house, and a fence and those that are around the trail, could we do the same thing on Larry's north side of the casino? The answer is no.
No.
So no trees there, no fences, no.
We can't.
We,
Well, WCID could do it if they wanted to.
yeah, we've asked them, they take that, and Sarah was gonna send me some more information, she said.
What happened to that project that was, it was talked about in board meetings? It was a situation almost exactly like behind your house. The board laid out their requirements or stipulated under what conditions they would pay for the installation of green space. And in the next board meeting, there was a presentation by Trevino, about a proposal that was $23,000 to install trees behind some houses.
This is the WCID board, Larry? Or not the HOA, we can't plant trees.
Yeah.
But the water board. It was a water.
Yeah, Larry, you know, I took those documents, when I presented information, I said, you know, you've done this board, here's your October executive session. And they agreed that at this point, we tabled it and said they didn't plan to do anything at this point. So I kind of got an email back.
Well, did they do it over there? Did they do it? Oh, no, I said, they're saying they're not considering it at this time.
Yeah,
So the question is, the month.
yeah. So the intent is to go back to that board. Hopefully in November, my intent was to ask our board to come help in Marcia, because at this point, they're not listening to any of us residents by ourselves. Steve, go ahead.
I've done that work.
Go ahead.
Well, I just wanted to know, I remember one family at the WCID board. The Reyes that are on Mesa Verde. They bought their home thinking that they would have a view and, there would be, and then they put the trail in. And they promised them that they would plant bushes and trees and things like that along, behind the fence in the WCID property.
Right.
Did they ever?
No,
Where is this?
Oh, Mason Verde, they're one of the, no, that trail comes within, what was it, 5 foot of their fence or 2 foot or something like that. It was, I mean, that big trail was right by their house.
when they were next to it, they're building trail behind our house, we went. And asked that very question, can you, while you're building it,
They
just put it in?
I want there very session discussion.
I wouldn't have changed, just saying. Yeah, I don't know if we're talking about the same house, but I walked that new Mockingbird Trail last week. And with what Sarah and Jeff are going through about wanting something planted and not getting anywhere, there is one or two houses along that trail that the trail doesn't go straight into their house like it does Jeff's, behind it. But there is a row of probably 6 to 8 bushes that obviously have been planted in the green belt behind these homes. And these plants are about, I want to say, this big around to this point, probably about that tall. But one of these days, if they survive, it's gonna be a hedge back there. So obviously,
They've done, yeah.
they've done it.
They don't make it out, they've done it. The people in the houses, they have done it.
And they just have.
I mean, if they actually, yeah, I don't know what did, but they're there, then they.
I'm only thinking of one before, but this one, they need some horsepower, right? So, because they were very kind and listened, like I said, they shared all the information, Larry had given us, and that you guys have been there, and the maps you gave us. So it was pretty well laid out, like trees on either side of the scene. But they, the email response was not, so I'm not, let's take another one of them. The intent of going there was right, 2024 budget.
But
So that,
did we discuss the fact that they built it?
I thought the
It was
trail,
park, it was park.
that's what, yeah.
I thought the trail plan included.
There's one,
There's plenty of.
Ellen shared that there's sufficient funds left in that fund. So, I didn't know that I was meeting, so that's why I said, go back and say, there's the funds.
They know what it means.
Right.
Green vegetation is in their verbiage in their minutes.
Yeah.
It's in their minutes several months of screening vegetation, so they know what it is.
They talked about when we.
I think that there's money in trail money, trail fund, but it's been too hot for them to find. That was my understanding.
Yeah,
It's
it's
been over
They just tell us that. Shut up.
Kurt said something that.
Well, the night that you spoke, I got up after Jim left and I emphasized that to him, that it was, because Jim was asking for funds for a certain thing, and I just reminded him that they had promised the community, and it was even in black and white, like you said, and minutes and everything else. And I just said, I just want to remind y'all that hasn't yet been done, I'm sure for logistical reasons because of the drought and all that stuff. And I was told like that was part of the reason. And I can kind of see that. Well,
Oh, yeah.
Things, we can see back.
There's irrigation for it.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's take another run at that, so. It was asked about green space watering schedules. I talked to Beth Wright, who's the general manager at FOS, and they was working back, and even started back there. I'm told they water. Religiously, I've seen them go off behind my house. I just haven't seen them recently.
Very odd.
So, sort of the ones that.
Water around ours.
The boulevards.
Yeah.
Well, they water the boulevard. That is the problem, not the street itself, and that was one of the things, I don't know who was in charge of that.
Well, that's why I asked that, right, she introduced herself and get,
Yeah.
Those,
Or-
on Essex Drive,
Yeah.
those, things, the sprinkler heads are pointed right at the road. They go not on the median as well, because there was water standing that deep the other day when I went down this drive.
I can see them go off when they get by.
But behind ours, by 4 houses, 5 houses, behind hams and mine, and that's, and, well, you're at the corner, so you get water.
Get one.
But we still, no sprinklers.
No, since we have, we don't
Yeah.
have.
Since April, we have not, no, and they used to, oh, my stuff is supposed to be.
There's one, I,
Like you're those,
I'll be right there. Yeah, she was very, she was letting go, I'll help you. After. That's how we.
Are they modern behind your house?
last year, this report, really all over weather, they watered behind our house in one area for a week. It's all a week without turning it on.
Stuff out.
And then last week, they watered one area behind our house, a different area from before. For 6 hours.
Really?
I don't know, some skates are hot down here. I think it's part of their.
I spoke to Darla about it, and I think she must have called him, because soon after I called her.
Yeah.
So,
That's all that he's here.
But if there's problems like that, they should investigate why that's happening. I mean,
Yeah.
obviously, this guy has switched it on.
Has anybody talked to submitted a warrant for named Vicky Khan? She's a paralegal there, and she will tend to answer a lot of my questions. Like when the minutes don't get published, the previous ones, I'll send her an email, and there's a company that does that for them. And she has to get on them, okay, the minutes aren't published yet. So,
Just under contact
yeah,
with me, and I'll give it a call too, but Marcia and I are both contact, that's right, and see if we can get some response, because they promised us. Sally's very nice to me.
That was very nice. They've been very.
They're always very nice, but
They come to me like, hey, you have a really great distribution list to the community. I'm like.
I'm motivated.
okay, so that's in summary of my report, as I said, a couple of sections we're to cover and revisions. So let me ask Marcia to go over our monthly finance issue.
Who likes money?
You copies of that again on the table.
Oh, no, I didn't give copies for it. It's only for you guys, but it is posted on the, or will be posted on the website too.
Okay.
So what I give to you guys as a committee is the abridged version, it's just the Cove one, but when I post it on the website, you'll see it's all of Belterra, so.
So
Make
which
sure they're like, it's all of this. But
section that we on the website?
well, and, we have to change the description, in our county, because it drove me nuts, because when you're in development, you know, sure, we'll call it section 15, but you guys are not just a number, you just have your name, so I was having them change it to
Oh,
code
okay.
specifically,
Okay.
code operating and code for service. So total assets that are operating as of September 30th, again, unaudited financials, we've got $18,212.03. In reserve, we're sitting at $182, well, $182,490.81. So guys are.
Is that before the game expense, Marcia?
Yes, ma'am.
182?
Yeah, you're gonna see some of those, I'm sure.
In a little while, I run the risk of losing everyone or everyone going, oh, this is fantastic. So I like budgeting, I like numbers, and so you'll just stick with me on it. So that's kind of the rundown there of the financial standing. Like I said, you get those on the website.
So the general comment is we're fine projected in terms of where we are versus budgeted.
Yeah, more than fine.
Okay, so we have. And we have, I think, Helen had a question about the reserves relative to the roads and maintenance, so. 24 budget, we've got money in there for maintenance of our Mendocino Lane, so that's still here, but I asked Marsh Condition. So let's have them inspect our road and see if there's any abnormal wear or anything, because right now there's about a 20-year life left. Okay,
Right, well, and when we get to the assessment rate, I've got a chart up there that can show everybody on that, and yes, the seal coating is due in 2024, so that would be part of.
Yeah.
Part of what they do is to give a comprehensive.
Yeah, inspection too. So we can do adjustments to our reserve based on that inspection.
What I'm afraid of is our road is not like the rest of Belterra. It was never inspected. It was built as a private road, so it's not going to be up to same standard as the rest of Belterra. So that's why I'm concerned about what the cost is going to be in the future. If anything happens, because I don't think it will last as long as the rest of Belterra because of the way it's built.
And who told you that this building's a private road?
That's all on the survey.
Specification.
So it does state, you guys are right, and then it does state on the plat that it acknowledges that unless, basically the long short of it is unless it's brought up to the same specifications as the rest of the roads, the county doesn't have to take maintenance of the responsibility. So I think there's a general assumption made there that the roads are not up to, are not built to the same specifications. That doesn't necessarily mean that the roads will fail any earlier, but that's where a professional coming in and taking a look at it. He could possibly do, he or she, they could do some core sampling possibly in an area to determine the proper layer between the ABC and just everything, how it's constructed, to make sure to kind of put our mind at ease as well.
Yeah, that's mainly what my concern is. Because I mean, I know if we can get a pothole, it's gonna be thousands and thousands of dollars. That reserve is gonna go down very quickly.
Yeah, we have fault lines running all through here, and that was one of the problems in the property up at Pflugerville. Is a fault line shifted, caused a major structural failure in their street there, and it cost them just under $150,000.
And that was covered with insurance because it's kind of a natural disaster.
Well, he can tell you about insurance covering certain natural
That's true.
disasters, and shifting in the land and things like that.
We see those are happening in Florida and stuff.
There's things all different before. Bottom all this down there, this house. Not the famous stuff, but a family member changed the insurance company. And the insurance company didn't have, or would not write sinkhole coverage for a period of time. And just like hurricanes, you know, if you call 3 days before the hurricane, you don't let's go run to your house, you're not gonna get hurricane.
I'm glad you made that point, because I was gonna ask you to go into that, Ken.
You know,
Insurance is something you can't get when you need it. You better have
Everything is excluded.
like the discussion on the insurance life part issue the other night at the board meeting. You know, that's a very unfortunate situation, but I can understand the insurance's position on it. And so that's gonna cost the board and the community more money, because we want to make sure these kids are safe when they're swimming. And not just the kids, but the people that are out there swimming in the earlier times of the day and stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, sometimes people suffer, you know, health accidents that can result in losing breath and drowning, and get out there and just let themselves.
let me make one comment about that. Rather than have a contractor go out and evaluate that, you need to get a civil engineer.
Yes.
You need to get a civil engineer that does work for Hayes County, somebody that knows something about roads, and get them to give you an evaluation and a recommendation on what's gonna be needed for the next 10 or 15 years, not a contractor.
Well,
They're gonna make it, yeah.
we have a reserve specialist that comes out, and yes, they're not a civil engineer, but I believe he has, actually, I think Elon has an engineering background. That he does that, he assigns the life expectancy to these things, but to your point, he's not he operates on a assumption that everything is built to proper specifications and whatnot. Now, my concern with a special engineer, back to Helen's point, now, or a civil engineer, is then you gotta pay them, and that's money. And
Sometimes it's worth paying the money up front, so a lot of expenses.
But it goes into the conversation that we're gonna have about you know, the reserve dollars and the assessments in a little while and have kind of future planning, what do we intend, so.
Hold that thought.
Yeah, but let's circle back to that. Good point, Ron.
So next bit is whole business and I think we covered all issues. Does the committee have any other whole business and that we haven't discussed today that was standing in our new business item?
Well, just a quick question. On the balance sheet. I'm looking at the net change at the top, at the bottom of liabilities and equity.
Or do you want to reserve the operating?
This is page 3.
Okay, got it.
Is question, is that a normal run rate for us on a monthly basis to be increasing our cash by $12,000? Is that a typical run rate?
You're not, you know, the cash, well, yes, because you're contributing every month to your reserves, and then there's interest income as well from the investments, so, yes.
Yeah, so our reserve fund is increasing by approximately $12,000 on a monthly basis.
I can't definitively say that it's 12,000 every single month.
Right.
So I'll look at the back, I'll look at the history, but.
Yeah, that's what I was asking you, this is a typical run rate.
There was none.
Yeah,
There was none in the line.
if you look, Steve, at the under cash on that page, so you see that MLOs and money market certificates. So AAB is Alliance, the new bank,
Alliance Association.
Association Bank, and those was a previous bank. So all of our reserve funds are in money market certificates, and they're rolled over and checked. Is this the best rate you can get at this point? And all that. So that's why the numbers go up and vary, because obviously if there's a refinancing or a transfer to other money market organizations, then you're going to see different amounts. So
So accounts receivable we do from other departments.
Yeah, sometimes there's, because some of the money goes in through the BCA and then gets transferred over to the Cove. And so sometimes the transfers don't happen, you know, before the close of the books. And so it'll be booked as a due to or interdepartmental transfer. So those will clear out before the next meeting. Before the next financials.
okay. And so I think this new business, we had 2 items on there, the decorated elements, the 7 signs on the gates, with 3 signs that were up. And our inspection of the 2024 assessment rate of that. So on the gates, Marcia sent out, went up to the committee, there was about over $7,000 estimate related to that 4 new signs being installed. So after the last board meeting, Pete Ogden, who's on that board, came up to me and he has some relationship.
It's his
or
company.
his company, but he said, you know, we could probably laser cut these for $1,000. He says, we couldn't pay them, but someone, he's one of your, you know, retirees that paid was right on pay. And I tried to install it. So I didn't know that was, I didn't know that was legal, this conflict of interest. So I sent out email to Marcia and Kat, the president of the board, said, hey, is this okay for people to be, you know, have a contract with the Cove? So the quick answer is yes, it is. It's all above board. So, you know, I haven't seen, we don't have a vote, but the general discussion is, so that there are options here. Either you take all those signs off.
Yes.
When we paint the gates, which I think we probably ought to do. We have a simpler sign that's on the wall that's in the Cove,
That's right.
or nothing at all. So any discussion?
There's an option to engage a graphic designer.
Well, that's they understand
So if you drive up, Essex, stop, we're part of that.
I think it said the code is if someone else was trying to find our street.
Yeah.
It was their label. Oh,
There's, Nancy and Mason, or Dan, even mine.
Yeah, so-
yeah.
So you can't miss that.
Right, but you know
Some
what's
people
going
consider outside the gate are considered the code as well, that's.
I think-
That's all for section
Yeah.
15.
Yeah.
Y'all just the gate, let's have, like,
Oh,
Yeah, the whole one.
technically section 15,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
y'all are, that just for reference sake, we just call it all code.
yeah, so we actually,
Well, what's the thing that Bob suggested, if people want to have a decoration on that, you know, if they want to go back to the sand sawma thing, and to do it in stainless steel. To brush stainless steel, it never has to be painted, it never has to have anything done to it, it is just, but,
I really don't think.
I really don't think we need anything.
okay, let me, all those in favor of just taking all the signs off and having no.
Nothing. Nothing.
That's a majority of the meeting, and that's why it's on the agenda, because I told Jim, I said, I just need some direction. Where do we want to go with this?
Well, thank me for his offer, say, you know.
Well, if it's been bad.
Somebody crashed it in.
That one got knocked down, and the ends are, it doesn't, they are no short, but it's all.
Yeah, they're pretty loud. We'll take them off, we'll do this. We'll put them on auction. And if you'd like to have them in the garage door.
I'll put it on the fence and back.
So just to make sure for the fourth time, just to be clear, for the first time.
Yeah.
The broken record is that this is a recommendation to the board to request that. So would someone like to make a motion to that? All right.
Remove the decoration from the gates that enter into the other gates.
And not the place.
And not replace them, okay.
There's a second.
You wanted to say that, all right, Helen's on
All in favor?
Any opposed?
Yeah.
Anybody abstaining? I'm just being clear. So that was unanimous, all right.
Okay, so, the next, new business, and Marcia has several financial options here. I talked to you the last couple of weeks and say, what are options, we know what we do. So we now, from the lawyer, know what we can't spend the money on. So the quick answer is you can always spend it on assets. So unless you want a really fancy keypad and kiosk or a wireless on your phone, or, you know, which could be done, there's really not a lot of money unless you want to make the walls look prettier, you know, the stone walls. So there's really very little we can do with that money. And so talking to Marcia, we said, well, let's look at some options and what we could do there. So of that $218 a month, we pay about $20 million and 5 cents goes to all of our reserves for all the assets. So part of that is for the gate, so whatever the gates are in the operators, you know, $8.12. You know, the road gets the majority of the reserves, and then the rest goes for the other things. So you look at what I have some options here, so.
Sure, so Jim and I kind of, like you said, broke it down into, okay, what are the, let's focus here, let's break it down into 3 options. So option 1, the same assessment rate, contribute to the reserves, keep going status quo like we've been doing, even though that we know that we're overfunded technically in reserves. Option 2, reduce the assessment rate, suspend the reserve contribution until the excess reserve funds are utilized or eaten up. Number 3, suspend the assessment collection and reserve contributions for 1 year. Again, these are all recommendations to the board has the authority to make a decision. As of right now, I was hoping to hear back from legal to just confirm, Jim wanted me to confirm that number 3 is a viable option. I don't see any reason why in Texas it's not a viable option. There are states in which reserve funds are highly regulated. Once you put a penny in there, there's no moving it back to operating. Texas is a little bit more cowboy. It will come eventually, but we don't necessarily have that restriction. So we're going to circle back to these options in a little bit. So this is where I said I'm staying in here. Okay. All right. I don't know if any of you guys have actually gone and taken a look at the reserve study on the website. I will tell you that 99.9% of it is BCA assets. So I extrapolated everything that is specific to the code. They'll reference it in there, and I think I mentioned it at the last committee meeting that they call it garden homes. I asked him to change it, he didn't, I missed it, so it can be a little confusing. But these are the components, the current, this is how they determine funding, this is standard practice across reserve companies that I've worked with over the past almost 16 years. The current cost estimate, this was drafted in 2023, so it's earlier this year. The current cost estimate times the effective age divided by the useful life gives you the fully funded balance for that particular year. So this is where, when I got these numbers, I said, well, wait a second, the code has got a lot more money in there. It was $182,000. However, if you have an eagle eye, you've probably gone, wait a second, Marcia, the gate operator line item says $16,000 to replace, and we just got a quote for how much? 28, yes, $28,000, so that's not right. He wasn't, this money wasn't in there. And well, we all know the cost of everything has gone up exponentially, so, you know, there's an adjustment there, so. I recalculated using the number that we actually, the actual proposal, to do an adjusted, fully funded balance for the code, because I wanna make sure we're accurate and as close to what it should be as possible. Okay, everybody staying with me?
Sure.
Reserve projections. So, current reserve balance as of 9/30, we already looked at that number, 182.5 for brevity's sake. Gate operator replacement's gotta come out of that still. Remaining 2023 reserve contributions gonna equal that, so we've got the current amount, less the operator replacement, plus how much we're going to put in for the rest of the year, gives us a projected year-end reserve balance. Cool, $158,000. So let me go back to, what does the reserve study say we should have in there to be fully funded? 57,000, adjustment for that actual operator cost of almost $5,000, and gives us our actual fully funded balance of 62,125. Therefore, simple math, our adjusted excess revenue or excess reserve funds is 95,968. Keep that number in mind, it's important for later. So let's circle back to our options again. So option one is, again, leaving everything the same, status quo, zero-based budget, transferring $19,468 to reserves, it's leaving the $218 per month assessment. Option two, reducing the assessment, no contribution to reserves. I estimate that this option two, you would be able to go 3 to 5 years at a reduced assessment rate before you eat up the excess funds. Sure.
If we would pick, say, if we pick that, say people say, oh, yes, I think that's a good idea. Then something happens to the roads and we have to repair them.
Right.
Would we do an assessment to everybody who is currently living on that street in order to pay for that?
That is the risk, yes. So then we have to result in a special assessment.
Because now we're paying for, I don't know about y'all, but I'm not a young chicken anymore. And now I'm paying for.
But there's funds in the reserve to handle that. You know, it would be excess of what was planned for that to happen.
Okay, so let me finish going with this before we get off the tangent here. Okay, so again, like I said, this option two would get you 3 to 5 years. Now, the reduction in assessments, the way it's calculated here, would contemplate a 17.3% reduction. However, that doesn't mean that there would be an assessment increase year over year, every other year during this 3 to 5 year term, because we still have to pay to do business, you know, the general operating of the association. So the cost goes up there. Option three, and I will be perfectly frank with you, I don't like it, is to not charge anybody assessments for 1 year and don't contribute to the reserves for 1 year. This is just spitball. And look what your shortfall would be. Remember I said, remember that $95,000? You would eat up that excess reserves in 1 year by doing that. I don't like it personally, too risky. When it comes to money, I'm risk averse. If you wanted an alternative option, and there is kind of another option in here, is to not reduce the assessment. Well, No, you do actually reduce the assessment if you're not contributing to reserves anyway, but would be to go with option two. If there is some sort of modification to the assessment, right, if that's the company's wish. I wanted to arm you guys with as much information as possible, so you knew kind of what the scenarios look like. I'm not necessarily advocating for option two, it's your decision, but if you wanted my opinion, that's it. My opinion is to stay away from option three.
So in general, right, discussion first. So the average was we guessed at the three options, you know, one of you has some other unique option, but we'd like, since he's in back in the board meeting is in 2 weeks, we want to come up with another option. Marcia's got a spreadsheet, so she can make some other changes. So right now, these three options seem reasonable to the committee to discuss, you know, and, you know, to the point you raised earlier, and as, you know, those of us who are older are probably more risk averse. So yeah, option three is probably like, you know, hell, just pay nothing. Now, no one's gonna change their lifestyle for $218 a month over the next year. So, you know, I think option three is probably not the best option unless someone who thinks this is the thing to do. So that leaves kind of options 1 and 2. So can I have some just general discussion about?
I just want to ask, when does our landscaping, quote come up? When is that going to be due? Is that January?
We are on a month with them effectively, so it's an evergreen contract. So we are currently in the process of developing RFP and request for proposal. For landscaping services, the board gave me the direction to go out to bid. There was an acknowledgement that the majority of, I know there's a few people who are dissatisfied with land care's services, but the majority of people are happy with land care. So the board was just acknowledged that basically the code may not want to, they may want to retain land care, but it is going to be, we are going up to bid on landscaping for that, but that will not be decided before January 1st.
Because the last time, you know, we had paid 200 a month, and if the landscaping went up, then they did 218 a month, right? What about if the landscaping should go up, if we kept it at 218, could that difference between that 218 and that 180 be applied to the landscaping to where everyone's monthly assessment would not go over the 218 or?
Well, I thought land care, we did work and raise the rates.
Correct, land care said that if we stay with them, the cost will stay the same. But for the next year, for 2024.
Well, I'd like to see an improvement in services.
You have one?
I'd like to see an improvement in services.
You'd like to see?
I mean, I really think we could use an additional mulching in the beds.
Well, see, and that's a good point too, though,
Mulching,
that
That's what we first
with a different company or modify their existing scope,
That's
there will
what
be
I'm
additional
saying.
cost for them.
Modify the existing contract. You know, originally, when we first moved here, well, with third home to be built, it included once a year bed cleanings.
Yes.
And so, and then that was wrong.
Yeah.
So if we've got this big reserves burning holes in people's pockets, then why not improve some services? Because we can do that. Without-
Does the speed act connect, are you running the?
So I write the RFP and then Diego on the speed act kind of edits.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
so we have gotten to the point with the RFP for services for the rec center and the retreat that is ready to present to the board. We're not quite done with the first draft of the Cove and Wellington. And of course, I would bring the initial scope draft to you guys because there may be some, you know, maybe they want to put the pretty flowers back in the annual color change or semi-annual color change. It's all or nothing.
Yes, I heard of it, but we never know. They took it away just as we had. The spring came our first year.
Yeah. Yeah. See, that's a good, that's, you know, not, that is the trouble with a community that has an speaking included, is never, not everyone's going to be on the same page with expectations or, you know, what they would like to see, so.
What's the best way to get some feedback on improvements services that land care,
Well,
entirely.
a survey. Well, let me say, it would be a conversation with the committee. And if you want to survey the community to determine how many people are, because if it's, 3 people that are dissatisfied with land care, like as a company, then maybe you don't want to go out to bid on it. So first we need to decide if you're going to go out to bid. If you don't, and you just want to modify the scope of land care, well, there may be additional costs for that, so steps.
An additional mulching when we first started in.
We did.
And now,
That's one too, right?
No, that's when I moved in 19, they said mulch once a year, and then 6 months later, they would turn the lawn. But it was no fair.
See, with the cost, some of my colleagues have, instead of passing along a service increase, they would reduce the scope to, do you know what I mean, of something.
Yes.
Because a lot of communities say, no, we don't want to pay more, okay, well then something has to give.
yeah.
So that may, I'm just speculating, that may have been what I'm.
That's a state the same, rather than after we, get that extra money in there.
So wait, let's please think about land care, the discussion. So do we, as Marty said, a quick survey out to the committee and say, what improvements or what changes in the current contract would you like in land care?
That's what I thought, better than, I agree, it's second mulch.
Yes.
I agree.
Well, and land care is a commercial company. So have you looked at the kind of lawnmowers they use to? Yes. That is your yard, they know that, but they're not we actually. They may not be, should be telling this, but we won't let them use that lawnmower. I just won't do it from the very
We
beginning.
have double residents who have asked.
But they're, yeah,
That's a couple of communities, so it could pretty much be a different landscaping company wins the
I
contract.
was like,
and
so I towards residential,
Mhm.
multi-residential properties.
I was sure that
I don't have a problem, the people in land care are really,
Yes.
but they're a commercial operation, and they're almost in countries on, and, that they just took this on because they were, it's so, I don't think it would be that big of a deal to them if you guys would try and find a company that specializes in residential land care and working with individual homeowners, that type of situation, using the kind of equipment that's not gonna run up our yards and stuff. They're limited on what they can do.
If what I suggest is someone on the committee make a motion. Get some information on what improvements.
Yeah.
And current.
I don't think we're gonna be able to get this question answered before the board meeting.
Right.
So what I would suggest is, I think that was kind of getting out of there, leave the assessment rate the same. Don't maybe contribute to reserves and add a little more into the landscaping budget. And then if you end up with a surplus at the end of the year, you can always move that to reserve or do a special project or something, just. Acknowledge that we may want to beef up services rather than cutting the assessment and losing out on that money for a whole year.
And going back
And
to
it's always lower the next year,
Yeah.
find out how this settles out.
And going back to supplemental, the board has the authority to make adjustments and amendments to how things are handled within section 15. So you're right, kind of figure out what y'all want to do, send that to the board and then go from there. I think that's a good suggestion.
Everyone's got to talk, so.
Yeah, I really like this to be a part of especially the president forum, but I understand you really have burning questions right now, so it's hard to. So, Ron, go ahead and Richard, yes. Go ahead.
Me?
Yes.
That 93,000 in the hole up there, you're still fully funded in the reserve. And so what's wrong with being fully funded? And if you need another $100,000, you go for a $2,000 special assessment.
No, there's too many people that.
Those two words are dirty words in this.
So I'd rather not ask everyone.
And you're gonna mess up my 16-year streak.
So it's, you know, it's a recommended amount. That have to be certain.
I'll give you $25 a bus.
So Ron, the thing is.
No, no, it's a money account.
Yeah, but you can't.
Especially have money, it's for years responsible to.
It's not, it may not even be one. That's. Well,
My frustration around this, have we ever bid the job? I mean, they've been the same company since we've lived here.
Years, but not, they're not original. I looked at it. You looked at it for 4 years.
Yeah.
I think Lancaster's been in here since 17. 16 or 17. I'm trying to pull my number in there.
It's, hard, you know, this, different between 180 and 18. But then when you find it, maybe you still have a bid for another company, because I'm sure this is the worst landscaping company we've ever had.
And it's like it's there.
Landscaping.
Hear anything from them about the, how do you feel about the using sleep?
I don't care. Anything about it. Y'all are my favorite. No, so it's for staff, nothing from them.
Pam has something.
I just have a question, when you, if you go for bids, can you say, we would like to see you using smaller mowers?
Absolutely.
Because that is what,
Yes, that's what I think.
And because we're drafting separate RFPs, but not only can the scope be different, but I don't have to go to the same companies that we go to for the more commercial aspect. You know, to Calvin's point, we can, I would probably offer it to a couple of the ones I already have in mind, because they're smaller than Lancaster.
They're certainly good for
But they're
residential.
good residential, because it's companies,
In
yeah.
this local
And
area.
they might be more.
It's the difference between
Right.
landscaping, the mow, blow and go, and gardening kind of mentality. So, yeah, absolutely. So,
So.
Because we have to take it, so on the edge of the board, so I move that we leave this monthly assessment as is and obtain a new, proposal for landscaping. Yeah.
care.
And
Care.
then make a decision on.
So good, second for, second.
so that, just to clarify, you're going ahead and distributing to reserves?
Yes.
Yeah.
Rather than acknowledging that you're adopting the surplus budget.
Especially when we know nothing about the road yet.
That's fair.
But they will need to be able to also maintain the irrigation system.
Okay, so do we have a discussion on this motion and action, select action?
Thank you for letting us put input on that. Got it.
We need to get more information. I might opinion before we jump.
That's, that,
Yeah, unfortunately, I thought what the issue was, you reduce it, you know, even the one TV or something, and then you visit every year, it's about, and then you keep it out. Then someone sees better pictures of dollar increase. You know, people complain to me about $80 for 200 feet. So that actually, everyone's been different. Yes. But, you know, people generally like tired, like, constant cash flow, you know, like surprise release.
Right.
So they're people bring that card, you know, you look at that, so yeah, we had a whole, recommendation, one of your things. We want to get it to check it out. Okay, any other discussion on that's motion to select option one? All in favor? Opposed? Any abstentions? Steve abstained.
Staying.
Yeah, like, until we have work.
Well, again, we can look for budget adjustments during year two as, oh, we're getting more information. The landscape contract will get more information on the roads, so there's some other stuff too. And we've got some other quotes that lay out to remove the signs and paint the gates once they're fixed.
What would be the difference between leaving it and tabling? Leaving it as is and tabling it until we have more information.
You could table it if we had more time. So I need a, what is that committee's wishes? So because November 9th is the actual date that the board's adopting the budgets. So.
Next time the budget is at the next meeting.
Yeah, November.
You will not, that's why I said. You have to have a meeting on that before then, so.
Let's do it.
I wouldn't suggest it, you can, yeah, I think you guys are. This is the most conservative approach.
Sure. Okay, it's the end of our new business. Are there any other new business items for the committee that we can put on the agenda? Any new issues pop up? The brain is there to solve. I had played, I want the committee all the work and as well as the residents who help support the resolution of these issues, because these are difficult issues. I like this league, the majority of the admins are behind us. Ken's gates.
Can be any other job.
I thought about putting a sign on the gates of the damage.
I have one more informative remark.
Yeah.
That, because I can see it, it's happening behind me, the other day, there were motorized bikes,
Yes.
cycles, motorcycles going up it. Electric bikes going up it.
Agreed.
And then she wants the new bridge. And then there were, like, roving gangs of mountain bikers going up, so, I mean, it's like a traffic jam. Not now today, but when.
And they're coming off the trail.
They're coming from the east side and then coming behind my house and going across the bridge and going all the way up 510.
I know, Steve, you know, start the sign that say no motor rides.
They're shot.
I don't. So I don't have, maybe, I don't see correct.
Yeah.
Maybe we could run wrong routes.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, that's honestly, you know.
I mean, it's becoming more.
Well,
Yeah, I mean, some of
It's
People discover the trail, they're like,
well, the thing is though, more young people, and I see this when we walk. More young people have electric bikes, and they have no. Those sense of
green spaces, you can't have any electric bikes, you know,
well, they know.
I see it.
Because they're young and they think they have a right to do anything.
I actually saw the parents
Doing in they don't, and sitting in front.
So Scott, also, I'm just gonna note that, I know, I would guess or where this, I can't believe what the old zones.
I'm sure, could a reminder be sent out that won't memorize or no.
Yeah, these are the CID.
That's what I'll ask you.
Someone, listens about 30,000 hours, they get a person walking their dog, and it's supposed to be a hurt, so.
Maybe the baby.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
But the baby one?
Yeah.
yeah.
They can't prohibit people on foot and on bicycles.
Yeah.
I'm sure the fire district does all that.
Well, they ride motorized bikes on their cycles. I mean, even the kids who are seriously elementary school.
Yeah.
Department ailment, I can imagine.
No, okay, so, this is the type of difficult forum, but any of you have any other questions, comments, issues you'd like to bring?
I want to throw something over here. The issue about the mowing and the maintenance behind the four homes.
which is all retreat property.
Mhm.
Because the property line of the retreat comes at the end of the,
Yeah, I think we covered this. Yeah, so-
No, but I was gonna have a question. Going back to the whole using our reserve, you know, to improve, lawn maintenance and stuff like that. Would it be possible, given that that is not WCID property, if the cost is a problem, to contribute some funds to assist with that, to make sure that that property directly behind those 4 homes?
So it is less to do with, the way the attorney explained it in his opinion, it's less to do with who owns the property and more to do with what does the supplemental declaration say the assessment collected from the Cove residents is to be used for. And it's very specific that it's supposed to be used for private street facilities and the landscaping of the
In
yards.
section 15, yeah, is the retreat, I believe the retreat is in section 15.
And
this
I need to look at the, yeah, I mean, that's where we go to look at the definitions of
I'm
what
only
it's
saying
saying.
the cost and the parcel.
So I can definitely look at it and.
Because see, we get what we get in our green space, which is WCID, because we pay WCID taxes. Well, they're paying HOA fund, you know, assessment, so behind their property should be taken care of as well.
Right.
I mean, that's the way I look at it.
I'll take it.
So the question is that are there funds in 24 budget?
Can those funds be used to help assist with that maintenance cost?
Oh, to plant trees? No, she's talking about no.
No, I'm talking about mowing and maintaining.
Oh.
Maintain.
But no,
She's not on the trees, which it kind of benefits the Cove as well, even though it's not the Cove's necessary responsibility. And that's where I'm saying is I need to look at the definitions of.
because I think that's a real high bids on maintaining.
It's expensive, but it is put into the RP and the RP and the revised quote I got from Land Care for 2024 to do mowing on that quarterly. So it's covered in 2024, and I know that Land Care knows what my expectation is. It's me fighting with this company to make sure when did a one-time mow on it.
Yeah,
But I would look into that and see if.
and as far as the tree thing, I mean, if we were planting trees back there, well, that would be.
We can, I'm sure, loan the HOA.
Yeah, and it was not down to the welding thing, but I was gonna tell you, I had contact with ACC. And they have a really good welding program there, and they actually take projects from the community for their people to do. So if we ever wanted to do something on the gates, that could be a resource that we can go to, and I like to do things like that with the different, you know, high schools and community education programs and stuff, so. I was just gonna throw that out there, but other than that, I think you guys have covered everything really well, and I appreciate it.
Awesome, thanks. Steve, you got a question?
Yeah, is there something, as far as those motorized electric bikes on the sidewalk, along Belterra Boulevard, where there are bike lanes?
It's, well, there's nothing in our governing documents, but there wouldn't be, because it's not our jurisdiction.
Pardon?
It's not our jurisdiction.
Is that a WCID?
Hayes County.
It's kind of-
Oh, that's-
No, that's the sidewalks. Because there was an email about sidewalk repair and we sent it over to WCID and this was back in Infomark days, but they said, oh yeah, we'll put it on the list. So I don't know if they compiled it and sent it to the county,
Yeah, that was in roads and bike.
The roads is definitely
Bike,
but the sidewalk.
Sidewalk.
the sidewalk-
And
But
going
it
back,
also becomes a safety concern. So I don't think it's all possible.
and going back to the supplemental too, the board, I mean, the committee do try and read and really familiarize yourself on what we're responsible for, because it's not just that road surface. It's the drainage, culverts, it's the sidewalks, it's everything, you know, so. If somebody sidewalk bubbles or whatever, you know, we're gonna want to make sure we've got plenty of money to take
And
care of that.
that's a good point, because if the curbs
The
are
currents.
on the reserve, but it's a more than 30-year item, so it's not funded. So that's the time frame that they look at for these assets of funding before they do something.
And none of those things are listed as assets. They don't have an assigned value and they're not listed as assets. So see, that's because we don't own.
Right, because you just have the maintenance responsibility of it.
Absolutely.
And the liability and the,
Yeah.
all the things.
Well, all that stuff.
You know, you got.
The other. There's food left.
Yes, take it up here.
Okay, we have a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Thank you again, guys. I'm strong and I appreciate it.